London Bridge Station is the first, really the oldest station or the oldest termini in London, the first railway line in London, built in 1836, linking Southwark with Greenwich. And the building, the railway itself is on a viaduct built about 23 feet above the ground. This is really to get away from the marshy land of Southwark, but also raised to facilitate, which if you know London now, the free passage of cattle and sheep to graze on the rich verdant banks of the Thames, which seems quite difficult to believe now. But also that's interesting because it really sets the kind of architectural character of the station at that point. I'm going to take you through really the development of the station, where that really is developed due to kind of engineering necessity rather than any kind of architectural hand. So really the significant moves are in 1872 when the through tracks come through, but really what you get is a very muddled station, something that's just been built up over time that is really disconnected from the urban realm and the street in particular, but also very difficult for passengers to use. And it's don't really necessarily take my word for it, but Sir John Betjeman, who is a poet laureate and a train enthusiast, said that London Bridge is the most complicated, muddled and unwelcoming of all London termini, and then went on to say, I do not see how any one of the thousands who have to use it during rush hours can find its way without a long apprenticeship. So really this kind of sets the scene in terms of our problem. Now the catalyst for this was actually the Thameslink programme, which is really a national project, certainly focused on the southeast of England, which is trying to link the coastal towns, Brighton, through London and up to places like Oxford and Milton Keynes, and really facilitate economic migration into the city. Now, London Bridge was part of a few projects, but it's the most important project because it actually unlocked 80% of all the additional capacity that the Thameslink project added. So really, to add this capacity, the station itself was hemmed in over time. There's obviously a lot of buildings built around there, so we only had the land that we had. And really, to facilitate this extra capacity, we went from 9 terminating platforms and 6 through, and we just sort of flipped that around. So we had 6 terminating platforms and 9 through platforms, because a through platform roughly allows double the number of trains through than a terminating platform. So really, you've got a kind of a whole layer of very complex problems. You've got all the kind of the economic problems. You've got trying to make the station work. You've got layers of history. But also you've got several other things. You've got a community which is severed, so you've really got to link the community through the station. It's not connected to that. You've got to kind of humanize the journeys. You've got to make it kind of enjoyable and have some sort of delight, I think, in your daily travel. A civic scale and presence, and I think this is a South London thing. North London is obviously South London is seen as a kind of poor cousin. And North London has King's Cross and St Pancras, and London Bridge is South London Station. So really, we felt they should have a civic scale and presence for its kind of local pride of Southwark. But also, we've got to design with construction in mind, which is really on a very constrained site. We've got to be able to build this while the station is running. We can't stop this. We can't stop London working. We have to keep it running. So really, in terms of solving the problem, we had to be bold and simple. So the idea was really to take a 75-metre cut through all of the existing arches and create a brand new street-level concourse. The London Underground station is a little bit further up, so we want to connect these the existing concourse with the new concourse, using this Western Arcade and create a new retail environment. In terms of the station itself, what we're trying to do is we're trying to add. We stitch back together the railway using bridges. We have a brand new kind of light airy concourse with all of the facilities you'd expect, and on top of that we have the tracks, and then we have the new roof on top of that. So just to take some of those things in turn, in terms of the station operations itself, it works kind of like an airport. You have all of the facilities down at the ground level, so the street is activated and people are effectively called to their platform when their train is coming. And the vertical transportation, or the vertical transportation cores, are set at third points on the platform to allow even distribution along the train, because we've got 1 or 2 minute turnaround. So we've got millions of people using it a year. We've got currently 50 million, and it's designed for 90 million passengers a year now. Coming through the station. So what you end up with then is you end up with the tracks stitched together over this new cut with voids in between. to allow daylight down. So the actual concourse itself feels light and bright and airy, even though it's underneath the tracks. We have vertical circulation cores within the daylit area, so people, intuitive wayfinding is easy, people know where they're going. I think also this is where materiality comes into it, where we've wrapped the new bridges in timber, so they have this kind of very haptic, warm quality, high quality finish, which is not something that a lot of the stations on the network in the UK has. We're using polished concrete and granite on the floors. This is the view of actually a connection to the Shard. There's a small concourse with the Shard, and you've got, in this particular image, you've got the terminating platforms, which are slightly lower on the right, and you've got the through platforms on the left, which are slightly higher. In terms of the connection, you've got the big new concourse in the middle, and then you've got this highlighted yellow, which is called the Western Arcade, which links the London Underground station, which is in the bottom left. This is really where we begin to negotiate with a little bit of history. You can see at the far end of the picture there's some brick quadripartite arches. This was all that was left of the original 1836 line, and really we wanted to sort of remember that and kind of evoke that space. So we've got kind of spatial memory, but we wanted it to be new, so we're using shells of in situ concrete, board marked concrete, which I think are evocative of the horizontality of brick, but very new. But also I think they pay reference to the brutalist heritage along the South Bank with the National Theatre. In terms of the roof, a very simple concept. We have this heavyweight base. We have a very lightweight set of canopies above, which raise in the centre to denote the concourse from above in the 5th elevation, but also to get natural daylight down. But we really wanted these kind of fluttering light ribbons of canopies just counterpointed against the base. How they do this is the centre raises up to allow north light down, but also a component of south light, and the edges are chamfered. So we didn't want this to be, a lot of north light spaces can have a very flat, bland light. We wanted to get these shafts of light in, the kind of evocative of Grand Central Station. You see those very familiar images. And here is some testing whereby we were looking at how we chamfer those faces. But here's what happens. We have a similar module either side, and the centre part of the platform raises up. And here you can see those kind of fluttering canopies that denote the centre of the concourse below. But also, I think this is we were given these lines by the railway. The railway wends its way through these viaducts and has to be where it is. But this is kind of the lines of the railway, in poetic terms, made into 3 dimensions and made into a kind of a physical form, if you like. These were all built in a modular way. So again, we brought everything on site. These are pre-finished modules. We've got all of the lighting and everything inside them and brought to site. Here's a very quick video showing how it's constructed. So what you see here is you see the viaducts being demolished. We have new bits of track being made. As soon as we've finished with one platform, it opens again. You see the station working around it, and I think really this is urban surgery. What we're doing here, I always liken to open heart surgery, but for this particular surgery, the patient is still jogging. So here we've got to allow people either side, and you can see us moving across the site and allowing those canopies to be built and really building the station from below. So just a few images to wrap up. Here's the Western Arcade with its board-marked concrete, this kind of evocation of history, and this is the project negotiating it with its past, effectively. We've then got this light, bright, airy concourse that has this lovely haptic quality of the different materials. It's got views through connecting both sides, it has unpaid links, so people of Southwark can walk between the river and other parts of Southwark freely, but in terms of passengers, it's very easy for them to understand. At platform level, a much simpler environment, but here you have the kind of ribbons, and actually where we get to the centre of the concourse, we've made it so the 2 canopies almost kiss. They kind of touch each other just to denote the centre of the platform when you're up there. And really, in compositional terms, we can't ignore the Shard. The Shard is there because the station's there, because of the densification around transport nodes. And I think the horizontality of our station really matches and complements the verticality of the Shard, and really both together are symbols of the kind of the social and economic change in South London. Thank you.
From the suburbs to the mega project.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that it
Yes.
sort of symbolised your
Yeah.
issue in one
Yeah.
in two presentations.
Indeed, and in the same amount of presentation time.
Yeah.
May I kick off? Yes. I was wondering, it is a big project, and you're talking also about the growth of passengers in the future. How does this building connect to its surroundings? Because inside everything is spacious and wide, as far as I can see. What does it mean at the moment you step out of this station? Did you have any influence on that? The positioning of the...
Well, we created this. You can see in this image at the bottom. Actually, it connects to More London. So there was an axis created by More London and the Greater London Assembly, and we actually demolished the building to create a small urban pocket square in front of the station. So the station actually has a proper urban space outside the front. But there's basically free access through there. There's the Stainer Street. Again, there's so many aspects of the project, I couldn't pull all of them out in the 10 minutes, but there's a Stainer Street which has a public art project that goes through there that links both sides of it. So it actually properly engages with the street, with retailers, all new retail around it. All of the existing viaducts have all been cleaned out, and there's retail around it. There's maker spaces now. There's spaces for fintech and innovation hubs. So the whole thing has become a real catalyzing project, and actually on the hospital side of the site, there are new developments there, and I think Roger was talking earlier, and that's on that side of it. So he's part of this regeneration.
Mm-hmm. Leslie?
The question, the interior of the sort of entry hall or the waiting hall looks very much like an airport. I mean, there's a way in which kind of airport and rail and bus are all becoming the same kind of space.
Yeah,
and
yep.
I was just wondering, I mean, you made the reference to Grand Central Station, which is very much about train travel. How do you see the relationship between these different modes of travel and this kind of hub?
Well, they're all interconnected. I see them as part of one journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kind of seamless journey. Now that you get information on trains. I mean, we do airports as well, and I think there is a definite confluence. Same issues, moving people, process. You know, there are gates, pay gates, retail. It's all kind of the same issues. So I think that it's one seamless experience. I don't necessarily think that they should be different anymore. I think it should be a high quality service, and people should be treated humanely and have natural daylight and feel safe, and be able to move around easily. And really, those are things that maybe airports are going maybe backwards with all of the security concerns. But so I think rail can lead the way in that side.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
Frederick, yeah.
I think I am very impressed with the main space, that multi-story elongated space. I think it is it's really very expressive, and I think it has a quality which not very few contemporary buildings have, which is that it is a celebration of a public use. It's not just a subway station or an underground station. It is really something much more elaborate, because it uses different materials, because light is handled very well. And well, I haven't been in it, but I think the photograph is very. But on the other hand, I'm rather surprised that coincides or lives with this other space with the vaults, which makes me remember of the cisterns in Constantinople in the 5th century before Christ.
Yeah.
Why? How do those two approaches, which are, I understand that these vaults existed, and you have decided to keep them.
Yeah.
But sometimes one has to make a choice. No, you have this marvelous open, elevated space, and then you have this very dark and rather.
Well, I think it's to do with the scope. I think you can see it on here. That the vaulted area is actually sort of more or less where the Shard is. So actually, there was already existing buildings and development on top of that, which was done before we arrived. We basically have taken a space in the centre of the platforms, because that's where you need the concourse to be able to distribute people. So it's the most logical place for it to be. And we've been able to deal with the architecture of that. And then, you then negotiate this contrast between the vault spaces and this new space. And I think actually the thing that you can't see, there's almost an antechamber between the two. You don't walk straight into it. There's actually a crosswalk or a cross passage, which is a 24-hour kind of unpaid link, which has art in it. So there's basically our space. There's an existing longitudinal tunnel which has public art, and then there are these vaults. So I think You know, it's, I mean, also vaults and railway stations, in terms of London anyway, the typology is very, very, very closely linked. So it's not a surprise to people, but I don't know, I think we've created a kind of a covered public square with natural daylight that's safe, light, bright, and has lots of things in it. And then we connect off to other sorts of experience. So I guess we weren't able to change that, and I actually don't think we'd want to. I think it's quite a delightful space, and I like that it's something that maybe our practice isn't known for, and I thought it was. I think it's a really lovely space. If you have time to go, you should do it. You'd love the contrast between the two. I assure you.
Well, I'll have a
You
look.
don't have to agree, then it's fine.
Do you want to ask?
The question is similar with the Frederick's one. I mean, looking from the bird's eye view of this image, it's very impressive. It's a modern contemporary building, transportation space. But when I go into the space, I feel the interior space, the feeling is not really the same language with what I expect from the outside with the timber material. You mentioned about the materiality with timber, the
Yeah.
warm.
Yeah.
And stuff. It's a bit domestic for me. But for
Okay.
public transportation space, I'm expecting, well, from my point of view, I'm looking more holistic. Or
Well, I see this space as part of. There's quite a great, certainly Northern European and mainly Scandinavian architecture for large public spaces, airports, there's Kastrup Airport in Denmark, and things that actually really do use timber a lot. We haven't used it because of some of the rules and regulations in the UK, which have recently been changed. And I think there would have been a lot more use of it in public buildings, and there are some older buildings where it's used. So I don't necessarily see it as domestic. I see it as a high quality finish that is easy, that is very easy for them to maintain, or easy for them to not to bother with. That allows a sort of warmth. I also quite like that you know, having this hard carapace and a softer interior. This is the human space. This is where the people are, and I think that it can be a little bit smaller scale and a little bit you know, nicer and warmer.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.